Knoxville, Tennessee. November 2015. Cold air, gray skies. Inside a brick home, turkey roasting, family gathering. Joel and Lisa Guy sat at the table, married over 30 years. Lisa, warm and giving. Joel, quiet and steady. Their house was full. 3 daughters, partners, grandchildren. Laughter echoing. At the table's end sat their son, 28-year-old Joel Michael Guy Jr., home from medical school. Polite, reserved, watching silently. Both parents were approaching retirement. House sold. New chapter in a smaller town awaited. They discussed a move, freedom, time together. But beneath the laughter, tension stirred. No one knew this dinner would be the last time Joel and Lisa were seen alive. Days later, the house would fall silent. What began as Thanksgiving would become one of Tennessee's most disturbing murder scenes. Joel Michael Guy Sr. was 61, a pipeline engineer. Patient by nature, neighbors remembered him waving each morning. Lisa Guy was 55, worked in human resources. Everyone counted on her. They met after Joel's first marriage ended. He had 3 daughters. Lisa stepped into the family and made it whole. In 1985, they married. When they had Joel Jr. in 1988, Lisa devoted herself to motherhood. By 2015, they were ready to retire. They'd sold their Knoxville home. The plan was simple. One last Thanksgiving, then a new beginning. Yet, that chapter held a fault line. For years, Lisa's paychecks went toward supporting Joel Jr., who'd never learned to live without them. He'd spent 9 years drifting through college, living on their money. Joel Sr. worried. We can't do this forever. Approaching retirement, the reality was clear. They could no longer fund their son's life. He was 28, old enough to stand alone. Family members said they intended to tell him over Thanksgiving. Time to provide for himself. No one imagined what they'd unleash. Monday, November 30th, 2015. Supposed to be one of Lisa's last work days. By 7 a.m., she should have been at her desk, but her chair stayed empty. Supervisor Jennifer White had noticed. Lisa was never late. Jennifer tried calling. No answer. The dependable pattern suddenly broken. Jennifer called Knox County Sheriff's Office. I have an employee who hasn't shown up. Very unlike her. Could someone check? Detective Stephen Ballard arrived. 2 vehicles in the driveway. Blinds drawn. He knocked. Silence. He called their names. Only wind answered. After several tries, he radioed dispatch. No response at residence. Back at work, unease deepened. Jennifer tried nearly 20 times. By mid-morning, her voice carried something sharper. Please, this isn't like her. I know something's wrong. Detective Jeremy McCord arrived just after midday for a second check. McCord walked up first. Front door locked. He leaned forward, cupping hands to glass. Scattered plastic grocery bags across the tile. Inside them, packages of meat, ice cream melting, like someone just came home and set them down. Something else hung in the air, rising warmth unnatural. Then came the smell, sharp chemical odor. Bleach, maybe stronger. They circled to the back. Gate secured. Back door's handle was missing. Looked removed. One vehicle was unlocked. Inside lay a garage remote. He pressed it. The garage door groaned, lifted. A wall of heat met them immediately. They stepped in carefully, announcing themselves. No response. Through the interior door, they entered the kitchen. The smell hit first. Sweet and metallic beneath chemical sting. On the stove, a pot simmered. The oven glowed faintly red. Both burners still on. McCord turned the dial off. Around them, 2 wallets, a purse. Cash stacked neatly. Grocery bags at entrance, untouched. Nothing stolen. Scattering of towels, bleach containers, baking soda. His instincts tightened. Not a medical emergency. Something else. Then they saw it. Dark stains on steps. Blood. We need backup, he said quietly. They began to climb. At the top, air was thick with heat and chemicals. Dark trail of blood dried and smeared. On the wall, handprints. At the landing, heap of women's clothes. Blouse, jeans, Sneakers spotted with stains. Scissors glinted. Open containers. Industrial-grade chemicals. One door stood ajar. Primary bedroom. Plastic sheeting hung from walls. Stretched across floor, taped at edges. The bed was bare. On the dresser, a handwritten note beside duct tape. He turned toward bathroom and froze. Two large plastic tubs filled the floor, both cloudy and bubbling. Inside them, outlines of what once were human bodies beneath chemical film. Flesh breaking down, bone beginning to surface. For a moment, neither spoke. Wasn't just decomposition. Was deliberate. Someone had tried to destroy what was left. Garden hose snaked across floor. Rubber gloves, kitchen knife, bottle of sodium hydroxide. They backed out. We have a crime scene. Requesting immediate backup. In kitchen below, sledgehammer rested near table. Piles of garbage bags, half filled. Bleach, baking soda, towels. Stove was still warm. On the burner, single pot sat covered. When one officer lifted the lid, steam rose. Inside floated unmistakable outline of a human head. Lisa's, features distorted by heat, but intact enough to recognize. For a long moment, no one spoke. When McCord finally broke stillness, his words were nearly a whisper. Shut it off. By time forensics arrived, cameras flashing, evidence markers spreading. Thermostat found set to 90 degrees. Every window sealed, every door locked from inside. Deputy stepped outside and vomited. When news reached headquarters, it spread in murmurs. 2 people dead, mutilated, dismembered. Inside the house, it became clear this wasn't just killing. It was systematic, planned, scientific in its cruelty. By evening, yellow tape surrounded property. Police lights flickered. Within hours, family members began calling, first in confusion, then panic. Michelle, Angela, and Chondice arrived at sheriff's office. Detectives sat with them, voices low. Their father and stepmother were gone. Michelle pressed palms to her face. Angela stared at floor. Chondice reached for her sister's hand. Outside, news trucks arrived. Neighbors stood in clusters, murmuring prayers. That night, when news reached Louisiana, different silence filled another house. Joel Michael Guy Jr.'s relatives began piecing things together. In Knoxville, daughters faced cruelest task, to tell their children that grandparents were gone. One sister finally broke down. He was always quiet, she said, barely audible. But he was our brother. When shock settled, detectives began piecing together final days. Thanksgiving Day, November 26, 2015. Guy home was bright and full. Photos showed Joel Sr. grinning beside daughters, Lisa's hand on his shoulder. There in corner was Joel Jr. smiling faintly, awkward but present. No one knew that behind that quiet face, a plan was already forming. Joel and Lisa had decided this would be last time they'd support their son financially. They'd told relatives they intended to speak with him, gently but firmly. Time to stand on his own. 2 days later, cameras caught Lisa entering a Walmart. She shopped for groceries, everyday items. Her face looked calm. At roughly same time, surveillance footage showed Joel Jr. moving quietly down aisles. He wore dark clothing. One by one, he placed items into cart. Bleach sprayers, hydrogen peroxide, drain cleaner, rubber gloves, handsaw, acid-resistant totes, new knives. Total came to just under $200. Detectives compared footage. Mother shopping for life. Son shopping for death. By Sunday, Guy home went quiet. Joel Sr. texted one daughter. Short routine message. Would be his last. Parents' decision to withdraw financial support had crossed into something that for their son felt like betrayal. For him, wasn't just money, was identity. Without them, he had nothing. So in isolation of his own logic, he decided that if their help ended, so would they. When dawn broke, investigators returned, wearing protective suits. House had become chamber of heat and decay. Inside master bathroom, 2 large tubs still sat, lids half melted. Chemical mixture turned cloudy, releasing sour vapor. Floating beneath surface were remnants of human anatomy. In adjacent exercise room, floorboard dark stain. There, Among dumbbells lay severed hands of Joel Sr., palms upward, frozen mid-reach. Pattern of cuts, clean, deliberate, spoke to steady hand. In kitchen, pot had cooled. When forensics reopened it, what they found was beyond comprehension. A human head, Lisa's, thermostat read 90 degrees. Hadn't been malfunction. Killer had said it deliberately. Then came discovery that changed everything. In upstairs bedroom that had belonged to Joel Jr., detectives found maroon backpack. Inside were receipts, notebooks. One spiral-bound notebook caught their attention. Its first page bore short, methodical bullet points. Get killing knives quiet. Flush chunks down toilet. Get plastic bin. Then further down in chilling plainness. $500,000 life insurance. All mine. Each line was clear, deliberate, unemotional. Blueprint written without hesitation. Backpack also contained handwritten timeline, beginning with Thanksgiving. Each note traced a thought process. No remorse in ink, only calculation. When forensic teams lifted prints, they matched perfectly to Joel Jr. DNA samples confirmed it. His footprints tracked from master bedroom through hall. Even receipts told story. Every purchase matched exactly, as though he'd left behind his own confession. Investigators gathered around evidence table. What they were looking at wasn't simply proof of guilt, was window into mind that had planned destruction of its own family with scientist detachment. Pages whispered something worse. Entitlement, cold and unwavering. This wasn't just murder, one detective muttered. It was planned to erase them. Pieces began to fit together. Motive plain and irrefutable. Wasn't about rage. Was about money. Joel and Lisa had worked their lives toward peaceful retirement. For years, they'd quietly financed Joel Jr.'s life. Rent, tuition, groceries. Every expense absorbed. He was 28 and had never worked single steady job. Their retirement meant fixed income. No room for adult son's expenses. So they decided to end support. Lisa had told her sister, tone firm but kind. Time for him to stand on his own. To her it was love. To him it was betrayal. Inside that notebook, investigators found truth. Entries weren't ramblings, were deliberate steps toward financial gain. The $500,000 life insurance mentioned repeatedly. His handwriting was calm, methodical. He'd calculated not only the act, but the outcome. Motive crystallized with chilling simplicity. Parents' love had become his currency. Their retirement was his deadline. Their death's a solution. Joel Michael Guy Jr. had always been described in halves. Brilliant but detached. Classmates remembered him as soft-spoken, polite, but difficult to read. He studied human anatomy with fascination. Lived alone in Baton Rouge. Supported entirely by his parents. Had no job, no income. When he returned home that Thanksgiving, no one suspected anything. He was polite, even warm, but those that would later remember small details that didn't sit right. His sudden attentiveness. His fixed expression when conversations drifted toward retirement. Later that night, Joel Jr. began moving boxes from childhood bedroom. Blue storage totes neatly packed. He told his sister he was organizing for move. She didn't question it. Those same totes were identical to ones used at crime scene. After finishing what he'd set out to do, Joel Jr. locked doors, left house in early hours, drove back to Louisiana, 600 miles south. By Tuesday, December 1st, 2015, agents had his apartment under surveillance. At 3:45 p.m., officers moved in. Arrest was swift. Joel Jr. opened door without resistance. He looked startled, not panicked. Inside apartment, everything was in order. Stacks of notebooks, anatomy charts. Nothing chaotic. When they searched his vehicle, truth followed. In trunk sat meat grinder, and used but clean alongside containers and chemicals. Receipts linked every item to him. No plea, no denial. Only silence. By nightfall, Joel Michael Guy Jr. was in custody, charged with murders of his parents. In Knoxville, news reached family. Michelle answered. Words didn't bring relief, only deeper silence. Nearly 4 years after murders, case returned to public eye inside packed courtroom. It was September 28th, 2019. Trial began in Knox County Criminal Court. Families filled benches. Prosecution began with spiral notebook, projected on screen. Each line, each list became voice for dead. Jurors sat still, reading words written in planning. Then came evidence. Chain of purchases, surveillance footage, chemical analysis. They called investigators to stand. Photographs that followed were unbearable. Some jurors turned away. Medical examiner testified. Spoke about 42 cuts on Joel Sr.'s body, 31 on Lisa's. Precision of dismemberment. Word silence room. Defense offered little. He sat motionless, occasionally jotting notes, never speaking. Over 4 days, courtroom became window into horror. When closing arguments came, prosecution simply looked toward jury. He planned every part of their deaths. Jury deliberated just a few hours. On October 2nd, 2019, they returned. Verdicts came one by one. Guilty on all counts. 2 counts first-degree murder, 3 counts felony murder, 2 count abuse of corpse. Judge Stevens' sword-delivered sentence. 2 consecutive life terms plus 4 additional years. No possibility of parole for 130 years. Joel Jr. didn't flinch, didn't cry. Judge Sword looked down, voice low but firm. Hopefully, it is most severe case I see in my career. With sound of gavel, story that began with family dinner ended with son standing in silence. When courtroom doors closed, silence followed families out. For Lisa and Joel Guy's daughters, life would never carry its old rhythm. Holidays arrived like empty echoes. Thanksgiving became unspoken absence. At sentencing, daughters stood before court, voices trembling. Their words were not for vengeance, but remembrance. One spoke of Lisa, the way she could make stranger feel at home. Another described her father, man who taught her to fish, to drive. My dad was my best friend. I'll never hear his laugh again. Their words filled courtroom more powerfully than any evidence. It wasn't justice they were speaking of. It was love taken too soon. Guy family home was eventually sold. New owners painted walls, changed floors. But neighbors still walked past without speaking, eyes drifting toward windows, remembering. Move they'd saved for was never made. Their belongings, packed for retirement that never came, were returned in boxes marked as evidence. As for their son, he now lives in quiet confinement inside Northwest Correctional Complex. Days measured not by purpose, but by repetition. His sentence stretches beyond human lifetime. Outside those walls, life goes on. Daughters raise their children. Grandchildren grow, carrying stories of grandparents they lost. At family gatherings, someone always sets aside a plate. Quiet gesture for ones who can't come home. Time moves forward, but grief never leaves. It simply changes shape. Less sharp, but always present. Story of Joel and Lisa Guy lives where tragedy often does. Not in horror how it ended, but in love that refused to die with them. Their kindness became memory. Their memory became legacy. And their legacy, no matter how broken, remains the part of them that Joel Jr. could never destroy.